Hey guys! So I wanted to do a flip through video of my most recent art journal, and I realized this year I managed to fill 5, which I'm pretty proud of. Last year I only managed to finish 3, so I figured why not do a flip through of all of them back to back and show how much my kind of style or what I used to do has evolved over the year and what it kind of turned into by the end of the year. I thought that was kind of interesting. But it turned out to be a pretty long video, so I also decided to do a voiceover and answer some of the most frequently asked questions that I get. So I'll be able to kind of talk about it because it's a little bit easier to talk about instead of write about in like DMs on Instagram because the little space is so small. So this is a little bit easier to kind of get into more here via voice instead. So, the first question I get asked is actually, what kind of journal do you use? And I get asked this at least once a week at this point, so I'll answer it really quickly here. I use an art journal, or sorry, a Moleskine Art Plus for my art journal. I also do a full video on all of the journals that I used or will be using in 2018 in my previous video, so you can go check that out if you want to get some more details on that. But the second most common question is, what inspires you? And it's such a difficult question to answer because my answer is everything. And I know that's such a cop out of an answer. So basically, anything that I find in day-to-day life, from like things photographs I find on the on the internet, on Tumblr, on Instagram that I save and think, how would I alter this, or how would I put my own spin on this? Things that I read and think, how would I want to create this in a visual way instead of in a written way? Also, a huge one, probably the most common one, is when I get like a new kind of, I guess, art supply or new type of material that I want to use. And so I want to see what I can make with it. So, like, when I get a new magazine or whatever and I flip through it and find some stuff I like, and I immediately go, okay, how would I collage this, or how would I use this in an art journal? That's hugely inspiring for me because that's probably like the number one thing that I start with is I just get out my collage folder, bring out the stuff that I would normally use and see how it would work together, bring out some paints, my pens, that kind of thing, and see what happens when I get it all together. So yeah, it's I know it's a really stupid answer, but yeah, everything inspires me. I don't have any other answer than that. The next question I get is, what motivates me? Or how do I fill so many journals in such a short amount of time? And I don't really think I do fill that many journals in such a short amount of time. I think that there's people out there who finish like 10 per year, and I think that's incredible, but I think it's all relative. I think it's how much is too much for you instead of how much is too much in general. So I don't really know how to answer that one, but the whole like what motivates you question, I find it's kind of um, it's so hard to answer, and it's almost like some people get very like insulting about it almost, where they're like, well, how can you afford to spend so much time on something like this when it doesn't like get you anything? And I don't really know how to answer that. What motivates me is myself. I want to see what I can create. I want to see how I can evolve in my style and in what I can make. And of course there's also the external motivation, like it feels great to be validated. It feels great to get lots of likes on Instagram or on Tumblr or whatever. But at the end of the day, there's tons of pages that I never post online. There's tons of pages that are just for me. In fact, out of the 5 journals that I finished this year, there's one that I basically haven't shown to anyone, but it's probably one of my favorites because it's so personal to me. But there's just there's the validation, but at the end of the day, you want to create something that you're proud of. And there's so many people out there who are like, well, I did some, I made some art, but I'm not really happy with how it turned out or whatever. And I feel that way all the time. I feel that way out of probably like 50% of the stuff I make, where I think, okay, well, this was fun to make, but the end result is just kind of blah. And, I don't really want to post it. And there's two things you can do. You can either not post it and move on, or you can post it and move on. And more often than not, I end up posting it and moving on, because, you know, it's still art. And the one thing I've learned over the years is someone will love it. There are going to be people out there who think the thing you created that you're kind of like, oh, this is garbage, are going to think this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. So it's all relative, and you gotta put the bad out there with the good, and you know, see how you evolve. And that's, for me, that's the most motivating thing of all, is seeing, you know, what I did in the beginning of this year, or what I did 2 years ago, or the stuff that I used to create in high school, you know, going through my sketchbooks back then, and seeing just how much I've changed and how much I've created since then is hugely motivating. So all of my motivation is from myself. And I know that's also a really crappy answer, but you know, I don't really know what else to say. So another question I get is, why do you do this? Why do you create art journals? And I guess it's a two-part question. Why do I do this? Why not? Why does anyone create art? Why do people make music? Or why do people, you know, paint or do anything? And it could be personal. It could be something that you just gotta get out, or it could be something that, you know, you create for ulterior purposes. You might be making something because you want money, or maybe you want validation from people. I think it's a mixture of all those things. You know, why do you make anything? Because I think it's human nature. So I don't really know how to answer that question. Again, it's a really difficult one. And as the second part is, why do you do this, and specifically to art journals instead of something else? I think that's actually a really interesting question, and it's a really difficult one to explain. For me, I had sketchbooks when I was in high school. One of my most influential artistic times of my life was in like the very end of high school. I had the most amazing art teacher of all time. She was just absolutely phenomenal. She was so inspiring, and her whole thing, her whole shtick was to, doesn't matter what you create, as long as you're creating and as long as you're challenging yourself, she would be just thrilled with you. And we had people from all walks of life in that art class, for people who just wanted it because it was an elective and just wanted to, you know, do something easy, to people who just loved art and you know, wanted to make beautiful things, or, you know, whatever. And she was there for everyone, and it didn't matter who you were, what you were creating, as long as you were trying, she was like just 100% there for you. And now looking back at those sketchbooks is so silly, because the stuff I made back then was so like juvenile and childish, but at the same time, she made it seem like they were like the most amazing things she's ever seen. And it was really important to me as a kid to hear that, because it was just hugely important for someone to recognize that, you know, I can create things that are, you know, amazing. So I don't know. I always loved sketchbooks. I've kept them my whole life. I've got like 5 of them from high school. And I tried to do art, like I tried to go to art school, and I absolutely hated it. And it was like the most uncreative time of my life, was actually going to art school. And so I kind of stopped creating for a short time in my life. And then I actually, interestingly enough, I watched a film by Guillermo del Toro about a couple years ago, and I started looking into him because I thought he was a very fascinating guy. And apparently he kept he keeps journals where he draws and writes about all of the monsters that he has in his films. And I thought, that is, oh, I love that so much. That is so cool. So he did an interview for a movie where he showed off some of his journals, and I thought, this is fantastic. This is like a mix between things that are personal to you, things that you do in your life, as well as art. And I just thought that was amazing. So I just went to the store, picked up a journal, and, you know, I think everyone has a bunch of notebooks that they have and have never used. But I figured, you know what, I'm going to do this. I'm going to finish a journal cover to cover. So I sat down, and that was my first ever art journal. That was back in 2015. And I filled it with everything I could find, from collage to writing to, back then it was very personal. I would write more about my day than I do now. and I loved it so much. So I just got into it. I met this incredible community, first through Tumblr and then through Instagram. And it's just so wonderful. And it's just been an absolutely positive and incredible experience from meeting some of the other artists on here, to seeing other people's work. And I just love it. I don't think I could ever stop doing this. I might slow down at some point, but I don't think I'll ever stop. The last question I get is, do you have any advice for someone who just wants to try this out? And it's really simple, really. Just find a journal that you like. My recommendation is get something with decent paper. My first ever art journal was just a regular Moleskine Classic, and I almost quit because it was such a crappy journal. The paper was just so thin and everything bled through it, and it couldn't hold on to paint or anything like that. So it was very, very frustrating, and I wish I'd gone with something that was more of a sketchbook quality. But basically just get a good journal, and you don't need a huge amount of art supplies. I can't stress that enough. Some of my most creative moments were moments where I was limited in what I had, where I had a pen and paper, where I had, just one marker. And, so much of my stuff, like this page right here with the constellations, that was all done with one pen, just one pen. So much of my more creative moments are done with very simple materials where I don't really use a lot. And yeah, so you don't need a lot. I say some good quality pens, some simple collage materials, and collage materials you can get for free so much of the time, from stuff that, like packaging, bags and stuff like that, from like magazines that you get for free. Some of my favorite collage material comes from my car dealership. Car dealership sends me these magazines with really beautiful like landscape photography, and I use it so frequently. So like this page here, I used some leaves. These are old like hologram stickers that my uncle gave me 15, 20 years ago that I've kept and had no idea what to do with. Old photographs, so much stuff that I use is free, and things that I just find, old receipts, postcards, bits of paper. I buy like a stack of like origami paper and just like rip that up and use that so much of the time. It's so cheap, and you can just like get all sorts of colors and stuff like that. Some pages are just painted. If you're someone who really loves painting, I say get yourself like a decent watercolor set and give it a whirl. So much stuff you can get on sale, or sometimes for like just incredibly like cheap prices online. So yeah, and the last question I get is which art supplies you would recommend for a beginner. But I'm gonna leave that to another video that I've got coming up, where I talk about all of my favorite art supplies and which ones are must-haves and which ones are, not that important, but are fun to try out. So yeah, you can keep an eye out for that. And yeah, I think I've answered most of the more common questions I get. If you have any more that you're interested in, if you have got questions that are more specific, do leave them in the comments or find me on Instagram, and I will be more than happy to answer them. And yeah, I think that's all I've got. If you'd like, you can find me on Instagram with the same handle, at Mercurial Milk, or on Tumblr with the exact same handle as well. And yeah, let me know what you guys love to see on my YouTube videos, and also let me know which journal you like the most. I'm kind of torn between the very last one, this one here, my November to December journal, which I finished really, really fast, or the one right before that. I think that one was probably my more creative time. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Please subscribe if you'd like to see some more videos, and have a wonderful day.